Chris Hedges, who should be at Foggy Bottom as Secretary of State in a sane United States government, is instead here on the mother of all talk shows, trying to find us through the fog of war. And very happy we are always, Chris, to see you. Let's start, as I did with Manar Adley, with the speculation mounting that the US is about to attack Iran again. Why would they do that when the Donald Trump military skills that were demonstrated, hitting a refrigerator door from 50,000 feet, were greater than Alexander the Great, greater than any triumph of any military leader ever? Well, why attack them again?
I think what we're going to see is the kind of pattern that defines Israel throughout the region. It violates every ceasefire agreement it signs. This is true whether that's with Hamas, with Lebanon, or with anyone else. And what this strike has done is essentially opened up this very familiar pattern that we've seen. Lebanon would be a good example, but Gaza would be another, where just periodically you begin to strike. It's, of course, what they did in Syria after the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad. They essentially neutralized Syrian military positions and outposts, airfields, and everything else. And that phrase, mowing the lawn, they use for Gaza to sort of keep Palestinians in Gaza constantly subjugated. I think that's writ large now throughout the region. Why would they attack? Well, because from all reports, they may have set back a nuclear. Well, first of all, let's be clear. There's no evidence that Iran is building a nuclear weapon, number one. Number two, they have every right to build a nuclear weapon. But it was they did not wipe it out, despite all of the hyperbole that Trump used to describe the mission. And I think it's also clear that this attack was probably primarily about regime change. I mean, they don't know how to read Iran. I worked in Iran. They don't get it. And that's why you saw so much of the leadership taken out. No, this is the opening salvo in what I fear will be a kind of a permanent, although periodic, war against Iran that, of course, Israel will try and suck the United States into. And Trump, being kind of clueless, will probably do it.
So all that talk from Trump over the last few days about negotiations and so on, that was all nonsense. They were always planning to return to the scene of their crimes.
Well, remember that when Israel first struck Iran, that was 2 days before they were supposed to meet in Oman to continue the negotiation. I mean, let's go all the way back, which of course you're well aware of, George, is that Iran signed under the Obama administration a nuclear agreement that it abided by. And Trump just willfully kind of ripped it up. And then of course Trump was saying he wasn't going to attack for 2 weeks, and but it's all a subterfuge. They don't take negotiations seriously. I'm talking about Israel and probably the United States, and I think that's something that we've seen throughout the 20 months of genocide, where there's been a kind of almost open ridicule on the part of the Israeli government towards any kind of ceasefire deal. Remember, there was a few months ago where they cut a deal, and then the Netanyahu government just immediately walked back from the very provisions that they'd agreed in. So, but that's just typical. I mean, you can go all the way back to Camp David, Oslo. Israel will sign agreements. They're always phased. The first phase gives them what they want, and then let's take Gaza. In that case, it's the hostages, and then they ignore every other phase, which is what happened in the last ceasefire in Gaza. So Israel has never abided by these agreements ever, and I don't expect that to change. And the United States is clearly in the pocket of Israel. It's nothing new.
Yeah, so you wouldn't be heartened by the news that Trump is trumpeting, that he's gotten Netanyahu to agree to a 60-day ceasefire. Has he, first of all? Have the other party to the conflict agreed to it? Will Israel stick to it? What's in this deal for either side or both?
Well, the remaining hostages. So what's the number now? 20 that are purported to be alive? That's what's in the deal. Netanyahu, I mean, there's nothing left of Gaza. It's been completely destroyed. 90% of the population has been displaced. They're living in under tarps or tents or amid the rubble. There's nothing left to bomb except the people of Gaza, which is, of course, now what's happening with this very cynical, Gaza Humanitarian Aid Foundation. But that's just baiting. That's luring Gaza out of the north so that it can be completely occupied and annexed by Israel. You get thousands, probably tens of thousands, since March 2nd. Of course, there's been no food. So 500,000 Palestinians now stand on the brink of starvation. They're lured into the south for 1 hour. There isn't anywhere enough food. There's only 4 aid hubs. The UN used to have 400, but that's not what the point is. The point is to, I think what Chris Gunnis called it, aid washing. Well, it's just to cover up the fact of that Israel has now weaponized starvation. And they use, this was an article in Audit, it's a very good article, that talked about how soldiers willfully fire on the crowds to keep them back for that 1 hour, which is often 2 a.m. And then as soon as the hour is up, they just fire again. And in the Aretz article, they said, we don't just open up with guns, we open up with machine guns and mortars. And dozens of people are killed and wounded every day. But it is, Israel clearly is moving now, and of course we've seen increased activity in the West Bank to drive the Palestinians out. How is that going to happen? I don't know that Israel even knows. They want to push them into the Sinai. They've negotiated, of course, with Sudan, Somalia, Somaliland. They don't really care where they go, as long as they go somewhere. But you will reach a point, where mass starvation, when your choice is between dying of mass starvation or leaving, there will be many people who, just save their children and perhaps themselves will leave. But there's no impediment, and no ceasefire deal, nothing is going to stop Israel's plan. The only thing that will stop it is cutting off the weapons supplies, which the United States and the UK and Germany have no intention of doing.
Looking at Trump's increasingly zany pronouncements and behavior, 6 weeks ago, he turned the White House into an electric car showroom, and today he said nobody wants electric cars. And in the interim, Elon Musk went from his BFF to his biggest enemy. He's now threatening, like a cheap mafia don, he's now threatening Musk with deportation or worse. He's fallen out with this congressman, Thomas Massey, who seems to be the perfect embodiment of the America First agenda. He's now spending heaven and earth to destroy him. He's falling out with his friends. He's contradicting himself daily, if not hourly. Is Trump going mad, or is there a method in this madness?
Well, you used the right word, George. It's a mafia. It's the way it works. And it's either you kiss the ring, and you kiss the ring obsequiously and constantly, or you're out. That's really the only kind of political, I don't want to call it sophistication, but the political agenda that Trump has. And you can see it when in these cabinet meetings. It looks like I covered Ceausescu's Romania. Everybody just sitting around who can fawn over the great leader more, who can be more obsequious than anyone else. Whether you're competent, most of them not, nothing else counts. Nothing else matters. And so I think that's what you're seeing. I don't think there's any real...
What a great pity. We've lost Chris, but we will get back to him, I promise you, because that was getting very interesting indeed. We've got Chris back on the line. Thank God for that. Chris, you were just explaining the cheap mafia behavior of Trump, and you were comparing him to Ceausescu, which I personally think was a bit unfair to Ceausescu. But the Trump the Trump political base is splintering under the pressure of all this, is it not? Is he burning capital? And if so, for what? For why?
Of course he's burning capital because he's betrayed his base, especially with this new bill, which is going to slash all sorts of programs that his base depends on. But he doesn't care because essentially he's destroyed what's left of the machinery. There wasn't much left. The machinery of a democratic system. And I mean, he's talking about deporting, stripping citizenship from the Mamdani, the Democratic candidate for the position of mayor in New York. I mean, we're just moving at a kind of galloping pace towards this repugnant authoritarianism, in which case the base doesn't matter. But yes, of course, it's a complete betrayal of the base. The base is fragmenting, but that doesn't matter anymore because the base doesn't have any say. And just to be clear, the base has no say either in the Democratic Party. 77% of registered Democrats wanted an arms embargo on Israel, but Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, who are all owned by the Israel lobby, could care less. So this is not a new phenomenon within America's decayed political system, but it's going to be more enhanced or more accelerated than it was in the past. But yes, you're completely right. The base is figuring out that it's betrayed, but it's also about to figure out that there's nothing they can do about it.
Well, nothing at the moment, but of course elections come along in the United States rather often, and that normally isn't a problem either because people can't get on the ballot, they can't raise the money to fight elections to win. But we've now got this wounded shark in the water by the name of Elon Musk. He's promising to set up the America Party. He's promising to put up the money to primary these Republican candidates that claim to be in favor of balancing the budget, but are voting for this absurdly titled Big Beautiful Bill. Is that anything to be cheerful about, the launch of the America Party? What impact would it have, Chris?
I don't think it would have a huge impact. It is true he has a lot of money. But he doesn't have much else, including common sense or much political savvy. I mean, let's be clear, the Democratic Party, which you cited in terms of the upcoming midterm elections, they have zero credibility as well. I think their approval rating is, if I remember correctly, is about 27%, or it's very, very low. Then because they've also betrayed the American population. I don't see, if there's any hope, I see it in Zoran Mamdani, the person who led a grassroots campaign, self-described democratic socialist, who really has thrown the ruling elites into shock, both the Democratic elites and the Republican elites. Cuomo, his candidate, former governor of New York, outspent him 20-1. And was backed by all of the Democratic Party establishment, which, by the way, has not endorsed Mamdani, even though he won the Democratic primary. So, we're going to have to build a counterweight, which will have to be wedded very closely with labor, because the only power we really have is the strike. If there's any hope or glimmer of hope, it comes out of that, but not Elon Musk. He can. I mean, Michael Bloomberg, remember, George, tried to buy himself a presidential nomination. I don't believe him. I think, what did he get, one delegate or something? I mean, not that money isn't important. Yeah. It is important.
It was a miserable failure.
But Musk is not a political animal. He's, he tried to fund this election. Was it in Michigan, I believe, or Minnesota? I can't remember. And it just fell flat on its face. So, well, yes, money is key. I don't, and also there are all sorts of ways Trump can use the federal government to punish Musk, and he will. He's very, very vindictive.
Mamdani is indeed an interesting fellow, and he ran a wonderful campaign. I've looked at some of his campaign ads. They're the best political ads I've ever seen, albeit too long for commercial use, but on social media they really, really worked. But that's in New York. Does Mamdani play in Peoria?
That's a good question. New York is New York. It's kind of not America. I mean, it's kind of like what Berlin was in Weimar. I think that it ultimately will play because I think that he appealed to the distress that the working poor and the working class are under it with very concrete and real proposals. I think the Democrats would have easily swamped Trump if they had offered the kind of FDR New Deal type proposals that the Democratic Party that used to define the Democratic Party. But they won't do that because, of course, they're owned by Goldman Sachs and the billionaire class. And that's always been, as you know, worked for Ralph Nader. That was always Nader's argument, that if they went back and appealed, but they can't because then they're talking about the Democrats, their base would walk out on them. But I think that economic populism is the most effective strategy we have in order to wrest back the working class from these proto-fascists and Christian fascists that, because of the betrayal by the Democratic Party, have essentially seized that electorate and essentially weaponized that very legitimate rage that they have at the ruling elites, and not just the Democratic Party elites, but remember the establishment Republican elites, the George Bushes and the Mitt Romneys and the Liz Cheneys, who have just migrated to the Democratic Party and are now honorary members of the Democratic Party. I mean, they spoke at the convention, and Kamala Harris kept running around talking about how proud she was that Dick Cheney, who's a war criminal and left office with, I think, a 13% approval rating, endorsed her. But I look at that whole ruling class as just a corpse. And what hope I have will come from these grassroots movements that are speaking in a very real way to the economic stagnation, the frustration, the sense of betrayal that grips most of the country.